Thanks for joining us from the Ohio AgNet Voice You Know with the News You Trust studio, sponsored by Grain Equipment Company, where innovation meets execution. I'm Dave Russell. Well, tomorrow we will hear from Farm Credit Mid-America about the importance of year-end planning. Then on Wednesday, Dale visits with Hardin County farmer Shane Kellogg. You might know him from the truck pulling world for an update on biodiesel performance. Well, speaking of Dale, he has an update about the Ohio forestry industry. Dale?
Joining me is Jenna Reese. And Jenna, it's time for our update on the forest industry. Jenna is the executive director of the Ohio Forestry Association. Jenna, I'm a little excited necessarily about bourbon, but how is the forestry industry associated with the impending bourbon crisis?
Many people in general don't realize that the Kentucky bourbon industry relies heavily on Ohio's native supply of white oak in our forests. And there's so much pressure on white oak. It's such a popular species in regard to furniture, decor, flooring, cabinetry, you name it. It's also the only species that legally can be used to produce bourbon barrel, and therefore the demand is just so strong for this species. And estimates are we're going to run out of enough new growth in white oak in the next 20 to 30 years. Devastate the bourbon industry.
This might be a weird question. Can we reuse the barrels?
So you can for other industries and products. Bourbon barrels often get reused for beer, wine, maple syrup, many other things. You see that bourbon barrel aged moniker on different products. Its time in the bourbon industry is done after one use. You have to have one never used, properly charred white oak barrel to be able to use it for bourbon.
Well, that explains why we need such a supply, because every year it's a new use for that. I'm glad there have other uses, but the bottom line is there a time period that we need to try to figure out how we're going to continue to contribute with new growth or even some harvest of some of the stands that are there?
It's actually really exciting that the time is now. We can solve this crisis if we just have landowners start managing for white oak specifically. If you don't have white oak on your property, you are not going to be able to generate a stand of healthy white oak. If your property already has it, then you are likely able to act now, implement a forest management plan. If you don't have one, reach out to a certified forester to get that going, and you can start working today to solve this crisis.
Jenna Reese, my guest, as we talk about bourbon and how it affects our white oak management. Thanks for the update, Jenna Reese, Executive Director of the Ohio Forestry Association.
Thanks, Dale. Well, what are some of the examples of state participation to develop an updated testing regime of milk for potential H5N1 contamination?
An expanded testing regime of bulk milk for the potential H5N1 virus recently announced by the Agriculture Department, starting with states with reported cases of the virus in dairy cattle, with the hope of expansion to all 50 states. Additional details about testing were provided by Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack in a visit to Iowa, including:
we will pay for the cost of sampling, pay for the testing and the shipping and all of the expenses associated with this. We're in the process of putting together the formal guidance as to how exactly this is going to work. To do that, we want to make sure we're working collaboratively with our state partners, the state veterinarians, the state ag commissioners and secretaries and directors, so that we get their input in terms of how best to craft this. But I think you're going to find that there's a genuine desire and interest to do this on the part of most folks, and to be able to hopefully begin the process of replicating what we have in Colorado.
He adds the updated testing regime should begin sometime this month. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
According to a report from the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, the volume of new operating loans increased at its fastest pace since 2017, with commercial banks issuing 40% more of these loans to farmers over last year. The markets are next.
Soybeans grown in Ohio and across the heartland are meeting the feedstock demand for clean fuels. Biodiesel is a clean-burning and reliable fuel that enhances engine life, power, and mileage. Plus, this high-performance fuel works in any diesel engine without modification. With biodiesel, we fuel the economy, do good for the environment, and support soybean farmers. Learn how using biodiesel can add value to every bushel of soybeans grown at soyohio.org.
Since 1926, Nationwide has been rooted in agriculture. Founded as the Farm Bureau Mutual Automobile Insurance Company with a mission to protect farmers and their communities, we honor our legacy by offering solutions that evolve with the complex needs of today's farms. As the leading insurer of America's farms and trusted by 8 farm bureaus for 100 years and counting, Nationwide is on your side. Number 1 insurer based on 2023 direct written premium per AM Best. Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates, Columbus, Ohio.
The market's brought to you by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. At the Board of Trade, December corn $4.16 up 2, March corn $4.30 up 3/4 cent. November soybeans $9.87 up 4 3/4. January beans $9.97 up 3 1/2. July wheat $6.04 down 1 1/4. At the Mercantile Exchange, December cattle $185.07 down 85 cents. December hogs $83.22 down 85 cents. January feeder cattle $242.42 down 77 cents. This is the Ohio AgNet.